Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. We've already done the weekend forecast, which you can find here on the homepage underneath this video. So we did bad earlier, right? Going to be a pretty mild week coming up and changeable at times, especially in the north. This is the JMA 3-monthly forecast going from February through to April. So we're going to have a look at the northern hemisphere height anomalies first of all, and then we'll have a look at the corresponding temperature and precipitation anomalies that go with those height anomalies later on in the video. It all makes sense as we work our way through. We'll be doing this spring forecast next Sunday, the last Sunday of the month. That's the second one. So we'll be doing that next weekend. We will be using the JMA for that update actually, but there's so much information that you can glean from the JMA model, and you just simply can't fit it all in. I can't fit it all in to those spring updates because we get around 11 long-range season models together and look at all of them, and I just don't have time really to look at everything that you can get from the JMA. So I like to isolate out, if you see what I mean, the JMA model and have a look at that in depth in a video on its own. So that's what we're going to be doing this evening. I'll get on with it in a second, but before I get on with that, just to say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages at GazWeb. Have a browse through widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads on most pages. They open out within the content when you watch them. They will close back up again, and it is all helping to pay for our website. So let's start off with the 500 millibar height anomalies for the coming 3 months from the northern hemisphere view. So looking down from the pole, if you like. Now, as you know, 500 millibar heights, blue extrapolates to low pressure, and yellow, orange, red will be extrapolating to high pressure. So we're going to start off with the anomaly for February first of all. Now, just to say where the UK is just here. So what we're seeing for February is that we've got a lot of ridging here down to the south of the country and extending out into the Atlantic as well. A lot of high pressure influences there around into the south of the UK. Trough of low pressure up to the north, and it means that the jet stream is doing something probably a bit like that. It's a bit of an odd looking chart with all of this low pressure around here towards the Pacific and the west coast of America. I mean, lots and lots of ridging apparently across most of the Atlantic, Europe into Asia as well. I'm not sure that's quite right, but anyway, for us it looks like we've got high pressure close to and generally to the south and west of the country with low pressure up to the north and west. Excuse me. It means that we probably have a lot of mild weather and also fairly dry weather as well through the course of February for the final month of the winter. We go through into March, and it's a very similar scenario, although the trough of low pressure is intensifying to the north in March, and the ridge is being pushed down more towards the south. So it means the jet stream is coming south here into the UK, a little bit like that. So it's probably turning more unsettled through into March. It's still Atlantic driven. It's probably still fairly mild, but probably not quite as anomalously mild as it would be in February, and probably more unsettled as well, especially up in the north and in the west of the country. And then we move through into April. We see quite a dramatic shift in April. What happens is that we lose all of that ridging to the south. That goes off towards southeastern parts of Europe. We set up a trough of low pressure right over top of the country, and we get this northern blocking appearing to the north of us and extending down into Greenland as well. So this is a much colder but a much more unsettled scenario as we go through to April. We're into the middle of spring now, and wouldn't you know it, we, after a very mild winter, we go into something much colder as we get through into the spring. There'll be a lot of cold air being entrenched into this trough from the north, so it will be a cold trough of low pressure. This is all very similar to 1998, and we know that the El Nino that we've got going on at the moment is very similar in nature and strength to the 97-98 El Nino event. And what the JMA is doing here is very similar to the late winter and spring of 1998, which did have a very mild February, and then we had a really wet and cold and at times quite wintry April in 1998, and it seems something similar here with this particular update of the JMA model. So that's how the 500 millimeter heights are looking for the next 3 months. Let's have a look at the corresponding temperature precipitation anomalies to see whether this is all backed up. So we're going to start off with, well, see, my interpretation is backed up, I should say. So we're going to start off with February. This is a mid-latitude view, so we don't see the North Pole with this. The British Isles is just here on this chart in the far top right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it, and this zone just here is sort of the equator and the tropical part of the Earth. So we're looking at this, if you like, from the centre to the tropics, and with the mid-latitudes on either side. We don't get the polar regions with these charts. So starting off with February, as we know, we've got a lot of ridging to the south of the country in February and out to west as well. It means the jet stream is generally doing something like that, going to the north of the country. I expect that to be a milder and drier than average scenario. So having a look at the rainfall in February, we see that the north is a little bit wetter than average, but the south is drier than average. So it implies a northwest-southeast split, really, for February, with the most unsettled conditions in the northwest, the driest conditions down in the south and the southeast. In terms of the temperatures, we're coming out milder than average. Not that much of not that much of an anomaly, actually, in terms of those mild average temperatures, just a little bit above average. And given the scenario, I don't expect that to be milder than that suggests. I would think we would be most likely to be around 1 to 2 degrees above average, as opposed to sort of average to just 1 degree above, which the model is suggesting. So I do think we'll probably have a milder February than that is indicating. The wind arrows, you probably can't see them all that well, but I can tell you that they are coming generally from a west-southwesterly type direction. Of course, this is the ridging that we've got going on down here, and it's dragging the air up from the south and west in that sort of fashion. So that's the reason it's a milder than average month, but also drier than average in the south. We go through into March. Remember, for March, we're strengthening the trough of low pressure to the north and pushing this ridge further south. It is still there to the south, but generally I think in March the jet stream is coming back closer to the country, so it implies a more unsettled month, I would have thought. Probably still fairly mild, but not as anomalously mild as we see in February. Let's have a look at the precipitation forecast, and that's going wetter than average for March. We're going into those blue curves. So again, that does imply that the jet stream is coming southwards into the country, bringing more unsettled conditions back into the UK. The temperature anomaly is again coming out milder than average, and that makes sense, really. You would expect it to be a fairly mild month, but I don't think the anomaly would be, although it looks very similar actually between March and February in terms of that temperature anomaly that we see here. I don't think it will be as anomalously mild in March as we have it in February, if you see what I mean, because the jet stream is coming further southwards. As the jet stream comes southwards, it does bring cooler air with it. So I would suspect, although temperatures probably sit a bit above average, not as anomalously mild as we get it in February. The wind arrows, again, you probably can't make them out all that well, but they're generally westerly. The black arrows are coming from the west, implying, again, that the jet stream is more or less just moving through into the country. And then finally we go through to April, and then in April, you remember, we get this big change. We can't see the northern blocking, but we do set up northern blocking to the north of the country in that sort of area, and we get a corresponding trough sitting underneath it with presumably much colder air being entrenched into that trough of low pressure. So with the trough stuck over the country, you'd expect a very wet month, unsettled month. You'd also expect it to be significantly colder than average as well. Let's have a look at the rainfall to see whether that's backed up, and yes it is. It's going for a wetter than average month in April, with those anomalies coming out above average. Temperatures, look at this, for the first time in 2016 we go colder than average. It's a long way out, of course, it's 3 months away, so these long range models are not to be relied upon. But there we go. For April, we go colder than average. There would be, with this, the prospect of snow. It's not too late in April to get snow, especially over high ground in the north, but you can get it even on low ground in the south, given the right synoptic setup. You'll also, more worryingly, really, you'll also expect some quite significant night frosts with this. Of course, in April, we're going to be getting the fruit blossom coming out. We're getting the early plants coming out. Nature will be springing into life. So not good news, really, at all, to be getting a cold-looking signal for April. The wind arrows telling us why it's going colder than average, because they're generally backing into the north, so the air within that trough of low pressure is coming down from the Arctic. That's the reason it's turning colder than average in April. And as I said, this is all very, very similar to what happened in 1998. So we know the El Nino has been transpiring very closely to the 97-98 El Nino event. We know what happened in 1998, but we had a very mild winter and exceptionally mild in February. Then it turned cooler, not particularly cold, but it did turn a little bit cooler and quite unsettled into March, and then we got through to April. We had a horrible month in April 1998. It was exceptionally wet, severe flooding through central parts of England, and also cold with snow at times, and very damaging late season frost in the north. Whether we do continue like this, and we're going to follow 1998 with this spring, we're going to have to wait and see. I wouldn't be betting everything on it turning out like this, because as I always say, these long-range models are highly experimental, and that chart for April, as worrying as it is, being so cold and unsettled, is 3 months away. So the extended range of the JMA output, so it could look very different next month. So if you don't want that cold weather in the middle of spring, don't be too concerned at this stage. It could well alter. But that's how the Japanese model is seeing the next 3 months. We're starting off mild and quite dry for February, returning cooler but still fairly mild and changeable for March, and then a cold, wet looking signal as we get through into April. And talking of El Nino and ENSO, tomorrow I'm going to be doing something a bit different, because I'm going to be sort of having a speculative video at GavsWeatherViz tomorrow from around 10 o'clock in the morning, just speculating what could happen after El Nino, because El Nino has now peaked and we're past the peak of this El Nino event. It's going to weaken. It is weakening. It will continue to weaken into the spring, and then we've got to think about what happens after El Nino. Do we go to neutral? Do we go to a cold event? Do we go to La Nina? If we do go to La Nina, what are the possible effects of that as we get through into the summer? So that will be tomorrow's video at GavsWeatherViz.com. I've already recorded. It's quite an interesting one, even if I say so myself. So come back for that from 10 a.m. tomorrow. Remember, the weekend forecast was released earlier today, so you can catch that further down on the homepage. And all that remains is just say thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.